Hey guys, welcome back. So finally we're getting to building this machine for doing drive imaging on. I've had the board out and removed the ROM, the BIOS ROM, reflashed it and soldered it back in, which you will see shortly because it was a pre-video I did before derusting this case. Then we'll go through setting up this machine, putting the software on it we need, and a few extra little things that I think would be quite neat. So anyway, we will get into this and get along and see how far we get. It should only be a one-part video, but who knows. Anyway guys, go and get a drink, a snack, and a comfy chair. And let's get on with it. Okay, so as you saw there, I took that off. It wasn't too much of an issue. You do need hot air to do this. You really do. You could, being four-sided, you really do. Or a preheater, if you've got one, that would help. As you saw too, I put the aluminium sticky foil around everything. This just saves plastic and other things getting burnt or melted as well, and desoldering. And that can stay on there even when I put it back on. So this one here is all desoldered and ready to go, and I've just got my programmer out, and this is me TL8662 Plus, and these were all of the, I bought it as a kit, so it came with all these extra add-ons for doing different types of chips. And the one I need is this one here that goes into that, and because then that fits inside of there. But as you can see, they come with all sorts. This is a solderable one, and then they come with sockets on them, different styles, different types, spring loaded, a smaller version of a ZIF socket on this one, and this is for 1.8 volt adaptation, and they even come with their legs that clip over the chips for the smaller ones. A lot of the stuff I don't use, so most of this can go back in the box. They're here if I need them. I've not used this one before, so that's cool that I've got it. I thought I did, I just needed to check. All those bits go back in there. I can take this one out, just make sure with my jumper here. So check, no jumper for 25 volts. Okay, so you take that off and put that on for the 25 volts. So that's the one I need to go into here, so I will do that and we'll get that programmed. Right, so I've checked to make sure that I don't have my 25 volt jumper on, and my chip will only go in one way, so I will pop that in. And if there's anything wrong with this chip, they are a standard EEPROM, so we can get another one anyway if we need to. Where's me? Okay, so that's popped in there easy enough. I just had a hair on the back of it. So we'll undo this, pop that one out, pop this one in, and always note where your front of this is for pin 1. That sits down in there. Yep. Yeah. Close that down, and we'll just get the USB. Just unwind it. Plug it in. And it's a 39SF020. Okay, so I've opened up me software for programming it. And this is the latest version I've got, which is 12.66. And I'm going to do a check on the chip. So, do a read on it. And yeah, it's checked that chip, so that's all fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase this chip first. Go tools, erase. Okay, and the chip's erased, so that's cool. So I'll go in and load up the file. Okay, so this BIOS file is from the website for the manufacturer of the board and Gigabyte, and I noticed that I'm not sure why, but it has all this blank in the beginning, so I take it that there are things that in memory that the machine needs not overwritten when it loads, so that'll be what that's for, I would take it. The other file that I tried to flash this with has the same at the beginning of it. So this is putting it back to the original one I had, which is the F2, rather than the newer version. So what I'll do now is we'll go in and I will flash this chip. And there we go. It's all done and verified. Now, if I wanted to on the board, let's get out of here. Right, so that's all done, guys. So now, if I really wanted to, these have the sockets on these boards, but you can actually get these as a press-in socket. Some boards had them on, some didn't. As a cost-cutting measure, they took them off. Now I can solder all this back on if I wanted to. The other way I could do is I could get one of these surface-mounted sockets and solder that on, and therefore the bias can be plugged in and out. I'm not going to... The problem is if I put this back in and it's got an issue, then it's got to come back out again. So I'm just wondering whether I should hunt out a socket and solder in a socket on this board. It programmed and verified alright. I think it should be fine. So, yeah, I think I'll solder it back in on the board and we'll be fine with that. Right, guys, so I'll do that. I'll take this out of here. I'll unplug the programmer and that and put that away, and we'll go around soldering this in. Now I'm going to do this by hand. I'm not going to do it with the hot air gun. Putting them back in is easier by hand, or if you have solder paste on the pads and then the hot air gun to get it to go back in is another good way of doing it. But I'll do it just by hand, I think. If it becomes too difficult, I will use the hot air gun, but we'll see how we go. Right, so I've got me flux here, so I can put a bit of flux down. The other thing is flux helps to keep them on the board. And the other thing you're going to need is, with some of these too, is they're a fine pitch, so you do need a fine solder to go with it. Use too thick a solder and you'll get solder bridges, but you can wick those away with a little bit of bit more flux in the iron, and just gently draw them away. Yep, that one's on. Making sure that looks like it's all lined up okay. I'll put one on down this end. Yep, that's stuck down. So look, I might be off a fraction. I might just over that a little bit. Yep, that looks pretty good there. Yep, they look all fairly good. I mean, this would be another reason why you may want to put a socket in, because it does get a little bit fiddly putting them in. Down in there to try and get rid of that tiny wee bridge at the bottom there. Oh no, that's got it. It's away from that. It's alright. Right, so I got rid of that. So right, so what I did there is I put some more flux around, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over it with the hot air, because I'm just going to make sure it's sitting down flat. So I'm going to heat it up, and then I'm just going to gently push down on it with the screwdriver. The other thing you'll notice with hot air is that if you're doing any of these surface mount stuff, is that you'll see the chip will move and actually seat itself if it's not quite right. And of course this is leaded solder as well, so it will melt quicker than the non-leaded stuff that you can get. Yeah, and I think that's pretty good. So we'll let that cool down, and then what we'll do is take the foil off and give it a clean up, and then probably chuck it back together and see if it fires up. That'll tell us one way or another to whether the chip is in fine or not. So guys, another day and a bit more on. I did have an issue with it when I put it back together. It wouldn't boot. And so I took the board. I didn't put it back in the case the first time. I disconnected everything, looked at the board, looked around the chip, and I noticed there was a couple of pins that didn't quite look right. So I mucked around with the soldering iron and the solder and some flux and seeing if I got them to how I'd like them. And then I plugged it back up, turned it on, and it partially went further but not all the way. I unplugged it all and looked at it a lot closer with the magnifying glass, and I noticed there was one pin at the very front that wasn't actually soldered down. I went in and soldered that one up, attached all the connectors to it, turned it on, and away it went. It booted through to the BIOS and started loading up. So I turned it off, and then this is where we are now. I've put it all back in the case, and this is it sitting right next to me here. And you'll see on that last video how well this case has come up. And I've got the, as I was saying in there, I didn't have the back plates in. And these are the back plates. These are the darker grey. And I actually think they look a lot nicer in the darker grey in the back than the light grey. It was just a slight, a small can of grey primer, a metal primer that I had that I wanted to use up, and it wasn't enough to do the whole case. That this whole case, this light grey, is called Wattle primer, and it's in a spray can. It's a metal primer, but it's made by Wattle, and this is a very, very pale grey, which I actually quite like. And that other grey is just a standard grey primer by some cheap manufacturer of metal primers, and that was in a can I had a wee while ago. It might have been Plasticoat or someone like that. Anyway guys, this is all done. I've plugged all this back together. So what we're going to do now is, this might end up being a two-parter, I think, just going through what I had to do to get the board back up and running and everything, and I will take you through the basic setups of this, and it is a little bit involved if you want to do multiple boot partitions, which is what I've done. The hard drive I have in here I think is either an 8 or a 10 gig drive, and what I wanted to do is put DOS 6.22 on it, Windows 95 and Windows 98. And I wanted that for specific reasons, in that some software will only run under certain versions of Windows and DOS, and some work better under one than another. So what I wanted is to have an open book to what I can use. The other thing is that there is enough room on this drive to do another partition, and I'm thinking about dropping XP onto it. Now my wanting to have 98 was to have USB options so I can dump stuff to USB stick to my main machine and back again if I need to copy things over. But if I go the XP route, then I can browse the other partitions and copy files off them. The only problem is when you go down that track of XP, is if anything goes a bit funny on you, you lose the lot. Whereas with 98, 95 and 622 are not too bad. They play fairly well together because they're still basically DOS in there. Whereas when you went to XP, they started to get rid of it. Anyway guys, that's where we're up to. So I will now take you over to getting into the machine and setting it up. Hang on. Well, I'm sorry guys, but it is going to be 2 parts. So I decided to stop it here. We're getting on towards half an hour and I thought that's long enough. I want to thank you for coming along on this journey with me so far, and in the next part we're going to start doing the software side of things, and that is setting up the hard drive and putting DOS 622 on, then putting 95 on, and then in the end putting 98 on. We will go through all of that, and hopefully you'll be back with me to see this. Come along on that journey with me as well, and I'll show you the software I'm going to use, and then we'll get into using Dave's software, which works under DOS 95 or 98, but you do have more control over certain things under DOS, and this is why I wanted the 3 different levels of it, so some things work better under other ways. And I'll go through what the machine is, what it's got inside it, and all that sort of stuff anyway. Alright guys, so thank you again. As I say, give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't. It just helps with all the analytics with YouTube. Helps me put out more content for you guys. So guys, have a great day. Have a great week. Until the next episode. Ciao.